And that is it for me.
Okay, I will call this meeting to order at 10:06 a.m. Central Time. First of all, I'd like to ask Robert Hood if he would lead us in the pledges.
Sure, Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to. First, the U.S. pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hood. I would like to seek a motion for an excused absence for Commissioner TJ Turner. He did email earlier and say that he had a conflict. If I could entertain a motion. And when you make your motion, would you please identify yourself? Just a little easier on the staff identifying who's making what motion.
I'll make that motion. Can y'all hear me?
Yes. Commissioner Leonard moved. Do I have a second?
Leonard, I move we excuse the absence of TJ Turner.
I'm Mike Williams.
Yeah,
I
no,
second it.
We had a motion made by Commissioner Leonard, second by Commissioner Williams. I will ask for all those in favor.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any commissioners abstaining? Motion carries. It was noted that Commissioner Stevens will be joining us a few minutes late, so we will make a note when she joins us. Some opening remarks. I will be relatively brief. I wish we were meeting in person. It would be a whole lot easier on everybody, including the staff. Due to the unique situation, we are meeting by Zoom. The building is currently, it's still closed. And if the building was open and there were still restrictions, I would still have some issues meeting and not making it ready available for the public. We would hate for someone high risk to have to come to the meeting in person if they were not comfortable. I really hope in November we can meet in person. I know staff is working on possibly a combination of in-person and virtually. There is some technology issues that we currently have that will prevent that. I will ask that when you make a motion, identify yourself in a second. That way we know who's making the motion, who's seconding it. When we have a motion that doesn't look like it's going to have any opposition, I will call for commissioners against the motion and commissioners abstaining first prior to calling for approval. I believe that's what we talked about, Vanessa. And if that's wrong, please correct me. Like I said, we have some very unique circumstances that we've been dealing with since March. I want to commend the staff and the commissioners also for taking strides to minimize the disruption in the agency. Hold times are still very, very good. Processing licenses is very, very good. I will tell you, Pearson View was shut down for about 4 weeks. Once they opened, they increased their testing center. I believe these numbers are somewhere in your book. They tested almost 3,900 people in about the same time frame. They normally test 2,900. I think everything's been running smooth. We did have a mail issue, which Chelsea will talk about a little bit later. Commend the staff for jumping on top of that and getting that taken care of. That finishes agenda item number 3. I would like to go to agenda item number 4. We need to appoint some people as a subcommittee to review applicants for the Education Standards Advisory Committee, along with the Real Estate Inspector Committee. We talked about this the previous month, and what I would like is a member of the public and 2 commissioners. Commissioner Wilkinson, Delora Wilkinson is the liaison for ESAC. So I would like for her to be one of the commissioners reviewing these applicants. And I would certainly entertain a couple other commissioners, one public and one industry, to take the other 2 spots to review these applicants. Do I have anybody that would like to volunteer?
I will.
Yeah, that's great. Great job.
Okay, Jason, Commissioner Hartgraves, and was that Commissioner Miller?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. And like I say, Delora is the liaison for that. So the 3 commissioners reviewing those applicants will be Commissioner Wilkinson, Commissioner Hartgraves, and Commissioner Miller. The next one is the Real Estate Inspector Committee. We need to appoint 3 positions for that. TJ has reached out and asked if he can be on that. I am the liaison. I would also like to participate, and I would entertain one more, preferably industry member for that selection committee. Do I have any volunteers to be the subcommittee to find the real estate inspectors? Unmute yourself, please.
If you don't get a volunteer, this is Jan Miller. I can help. I can do it.
Okay. Would anybody like to? Commissioner Miller also doing the ESAC, but we can certainly welcome on this inspector one. Okay. We will have myself, Commissioner TJ Turner, and Commissioner Miller reviewing the applicants for the Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee. There will be some special circumstances in these appointments that we will go over later. I don't want to complicate things, but a couple of them have gotten off cycle, so we will try to get those back on cycle like they were supposed to. One of them was a position I had, and when I was appointed to the commission, it kind of messed up the terms. Okay. Any other discussion on agenda item number 4? If not, I will go to agenda item number 5, and that's staff and committee reports. And we will start with Executive Director Chelsea Buckholz. Is that correct, Chelsea?
That's correct. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Tony and I will provide you each with a brief update, and then I wanted to just also note that you have reports by each of our directors in your materials under agenda item 5, and on the front page of that agenda item is a summary of those reports. So you won't hear from each of us today, just from myself and from Tony. So hello. I do want to be brief. I hope you and your families remain safe and well. I share the sentiments of our chair. I'm sorry that we remain virtual. It's going to be a very good day when we are back in a room together. I really miss what comes from being in the same room, but I am grateful for really the ability to meet in this way. It's a wonderful tool during this unique time. I'll begin with an update on COVID-19 here at TREC. We remain almost entirely remote, and our workforce has remained almost entirely healthy. We have had a few scares, as I'm sure most of you have had, but we have been very fortunate as an agency in that regard. About the same time, or middle of June, that we provided an opportunity for volunteers within the agency to begin returning to the office, the infection numbers in Austin shot dramatically upward, and the danger of returning increased. And so while we haven't had any formal action pausing that return to the office, we really have had very few volunteers in that regard and have remained remote. We have protocols in place for when a more robust return to the office occurs, but I have committed to our staff that we will not be returning to the office in full until it's safer to do so, and likely that means until there's a vaccine, which I know the entire world is waiting for. Many of our staff have the hardship of navigating work and young children, school needs, and other burdens that come from this pandemic. We remain able to fulfill our mission remotely, but are allowing great flexibility to staff on how and when they work to account for these individual burdens. Those become even more acute as we march towards the first days of school this month. In some ways, however, we are more productive than ever. And I'm very proud of our team. As you know, the governor has deemed all of our license holders to be essential, and our license holders continue to work in these unique conditions. And while we extended application deadlines and also renewal deadlines starting in March, those extensions ended last month at the end of July. Our licensing and our customer relations teams have been very hard at work to address the processing and the questions that are associated with the 5 months of applications and renewals that have flooded in over the course of really the last month. Tony is going to speak to you about some of these details, but so I don't want to steal his thunder, but I did just want to recognize our licensing and customer relations teams for their very heavy lift. And as of this month, renewals and applications are no longer subject to those extensions, and that is with some exception. To the extent that applicants, not license holders, see challenges in completing their examination or their coursework, they can come to us on a case-by-case extension, case-by-case basis extension. And then, of course, our sales agents and brokers, when they renew, they have always had the mechanism for a 60-day deferral to complete their CE. So that is what we are pointing folks to at this point. In the midst of processing this mountain of applications and renewals, as you know, we've had an issue with mail. The company that we utilize to securely shred our no longer needed documents inadvertently shredded about half of a day's worth of mail. We estimate that to be around 70 pieces of mail that were very securely destroyed, but destroyed nonetheless. So over the past few weeks, we've publicized this, and we've asked those who have sent us mail between a very broad range of dates due to just delays in mail processing on the Postal Service end, a date between July 9th and July 20th, to check and see if we've processed what they sent us. Has their check been cashed? Have they checked the application status tracker or the license holder search tool? Can they find proof that we have received their mail? We've also provided a mechanism for license holders to contact the agency to do a double check now that enough time has passed for us to process what they sent us, either processed or not. We've also called all brokers who oversee 10 or more who were set for a renewal but who had not yet renewed to ensure that this issue didn't have more far-reaching tentacles by expiring license holders who are supervised by those brokers. The remainder of the brokers will receive by text one more reminder that their license is expiring. Of course, with an issue like this, we do not know what we did not receive, and time will tell that. It will cause hardship to license holders. I do not know how to eliminate that hardship, but by waiving any late fees that would be incurred and by watching the issue closely, it's my mission to mitigate that hardship to the greatest extent possible. I want you to know that we have changed our process to ensure that this does not happen again, and have taken great efforts to do that. One thing I did want you to note in your report materials is on page 20. That's the beginning of the licensing division's report. You'll see that our license holder counts and our applications continue to steadily increase. We're watching this very closely just because of this unknown time to determine if our original projections will hold true so that we can adjust to account for increases and decreases in both workload and of course, revenue. A lot is unknown. And over the coming months, we will have a better picture of what this pandemic has done to our license holder numbers and our bottom line, but we continue to watch that very closely. So in other news, I have named, I sent you an email so you know this, I have named Tawana Hood as our new Human Resources Director. I hope soon to have in place her replacement to round out the human resources team. I want you to know that she is a very strong natural leader in our agency, one that people come to and have for a very long time. So I'm delighted to have her on our leadership team. And hiring Tawana really is my last block to building the TREC team under my leadership. I'm grateful for the support of each of you in my first months in this position. And it's important that I tell you that I found this season, this unique season, to be a bit of an unexpected gift in some ways, not in others. It was my plan to travel much of the spring to hear from license holders. The chair and I were to travel to do the strategic planning tour. And then, of course, I would simultaneously spend time with staff to hear from them and to learn the inner workings of the agency. And as you know, I couldn't do any of that travel. And what that has done is given me the privilege of focusing internally. I'm itching to get out and to be face to face with our license holders. I know that that's incredibly important. But with the prohibition has given me the ability to focus inward. And it's been a great opportunity to solidify a relationship with staff, to learn from them, and to really understand more of the agency. Now, but not for COVID-19, I would have been torn between the two. I have met with license holders virtually with the chair and on as many occasions as I can. But it will be a great privilege and delight to get out there and meet person to person. I know each of us is yearning to see people in real life in various forms of life. But until then, we will do what we can to create those touch points with license holders and then also internally. With that, I'm happy to address anything that's on your mind.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This is Bob Leonard. Chelsea, those infamous 70 pieces of mail, is it possible that any of those might contain correspondence that from a legal perspective might involve enforcement? Some of our respondents trying to hit dates and so on?
I'm glad you asked that. I should have mentioned that on the front end. Yes, absolutely. And our enforcement teams have reached out to respondents who would be in that window, who they're expecting payments from, correspondence with, to ensure that we haven't missed something in that regard. So that population is small enough that allowed us to reach out to those folks individually. We also, similarly, we receive a lot of correspondence from the Workforce Commission related to employment termination, updates on hearings, things like that. So we have reached out to the Workforce Commission to ensure that we haven't missed anything in the mail. Is that a perfect system? No. But we have done a lot of brainstorming to try to figure out how to address what is most likely to be in the mail, but also those unique other things that could have come in the mail. So I'm certain we've missed something. I wish I knew what it was.
Thank you.
Sure.
And one last thing I want to, although I did it privately, I want to go on record as saying congratulations to Tawana. I know she'll do an absolutely terrific job, and I'm thrilled.
Amen to that.
Any other questions for Executive Director Buckholz? All right, thank you. Deputy Executive Director Tony Slagle will present next.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tony Slagle, Deputy Executive Director. It is my privilege to do what I get to do, or have been able to do over the last several meetings, which is to come before you and give you good news for the most part. And it's, rests solely on the staff that I oversee. I wish I could take credit for it, but it's all they're doing. I want to touch briefly on just the contact center. I sent out my customer service report for July earlier. I believe you all received that. As I mentioned in there, July was the busiest month for the fiscal year for the contact center. Prior to that, obviously with the extensions in place, things were fairly quiet. So we weren't sure really how staff would handle the influx of calls and emails that came in, but they did so like champs. And for the busiest month of the fiscal year, we had just over a minute hold time with a under 4-minute abandonment rate, which I think everyone could be proud of. I think there's contact centers and other state agencies that would be jealous of those numbers on a regular basis, and our staff was able to do that with over 22,000 calls coming in a month. So I think that's fantastic. I did want to address, and that's also with answering almost 97% of those calls on the first call, not having to wait for a call back, so it's not just that they're handling the calls, they're handling them on the first go around, which is important. So I just wanted to touch briefly on the first week in August in case you're interested in that. The first business day of August was fairly busy. But we've been trending downward, and things have slowed down to a certain extent in terms of the volume of calls coming in, which is good. It gives staff a bit of a respite based on the last, say, 10 to 12 business days. We have yet to run the Expire program. I imagine those numbers will tick back up when that happens, but I have full confidence that the contact center will be able to handle any increase without any issues. Before I move on to licensing, does anyone have any questions about any of that?
No, but Tony, this is Bob Leonard. I'd like to say congratulations, not just on the performance of the contact center, because this has been kind of a personal thing for me over the last couple of years. Congratulations not only on getting that down to where it needs to be, but being consistent with it. It wasn't just 1 or 2 months. You and Robert have consistently been able to serve our stakeholders and customers, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I know staff appreciates hearing that from you as well, so thank you. If there's not any other questions about the contact center, I just wanted to touch briefly on the licensing division, which I also they also directly report to me. As I mentioned in my report, they also were busy and have been able to handle the increased volume also in a stellar fashion. Just to touch on some numbers, they were able to process over in July 238% increase in SAE applications. And for those of you who aren't broker members, SAE is the first time renewal. So sales agents are required to take a certain amount of education in their first year. And so that first renewal cycle is called the SAE renewal cycle. And they were able to handle a 238% increase in July and a 21% increase in online sales apps. And this was all with maintaining the regular processing for all of their applications they were doing. So they're able to increase their productivity on those things without any lag time really in any of the other applications. So I just wanted to point that out to you, that they've also been really, really working hard. And then finally, and before I move on, any questions about any of that?
Tony?
Yes, ma'am.
This is a new norm we can take a lot of pleasure in.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's to piggyback on something that the executive director said. If there is any blessing in this time, it's been staff's ability to sort of figure some things out to address this new normal and bring them forward. And I think all of these things that we've been able to do are going to serve the agency well moving forward. So I appreciate that. The education division, which I don't speak to very often, is also a division I oversee. I just wanted to inform the commissioners of a few things that have a few highlights on their end. They have implemented some new things online. So providers are now available. You can search them in the license holder search, which is very nice. You can type in a provider, pull them up, and their information's there. And then for the course evaluation process, that is now fillable online. So students can take advantage of the course evaluation. They go to our website and input that information, do an evaluation, course evaluation online through a web form on our website. And they've also added some additional information on the inspector continuing education courses, providers, where when you search for a provider on that, you can drill down and see the courses that are currently offered by those providers. So there's been some work to try to provide some additional customer service area issues on the education side, deal with those, and allow our license holders to be able to access information without having to contact us on the phones, have it at their fingertips. So that is essentially it for me. Unless anyone has any questions, I thank you.
Tony, I have a question. This is Jan Miller.
Yes, ma'am.
How many of those course evaluations are you all actually receiving?
You mean prior to this web form process or with the web form process?
Well, I'll just take with the web form process.
If Jen Wheeler is on the call, she can probably answer that significantly better than me.
And
Good morning,
I can just
Commissioner Miller. Good morning, all commissioners. Yeah, so the new capability with the live web form version allows us to collect and track all of the responses submitted online. Typically, outside of that, when our education providers offer the paper form of a course or instructor evaluation, their requirement is to maintain those records for 4 years, and then we can request those of them. But the great thing about this feature is that, you know, this allows the education providers to just direct the students to our website, and then we have all of that information at hand, which will benefit us in the audit, you know, as we continue to grow the audit program.
Well, I guess my question though is, are we really receiving them back? Because in some cases you can put that out there that it's available, but nobody takes advantage of it, much like our reactions to the website. It was in that situation. They got 18 a month or something. So how many are we getting?
You know, I'll have to check the number exactly. I don't have that information right now. I can get that for you. But given that it just launched, we're probably going to start to see that number increase. But I'd be happy to get back to you on that. We launched that tool last week. And I apologize. I should have been prepared with numbers for you, but I can get back to you with that.
I was just thinking it had been in, or we're supposed to be able to do that on some classes that I've taken, and I've never gone back to do it, which shame on me.
Well, so we'll try to get kind of a percentage of responses, so that you know if we're getting much back. Does that sound okay?
Of course.
This is Chelsea again. I did want to mention, the chair asked me on Friday a very good question about if our renewals look like they have what's our percentage of renewal compared to past years? And I meant to speak to that earlier, and I didn't. The short answer is it's going to be a while until we know, because of how renewals can trickle in over 6 months. It looks right now that our numbers are slightly down. However, we have not actually expired people yet, run the program to expire, and so that may correct the percentage once that's happened. So we're kind of mid-process, don't have a lot of information yet, but we're watching that very closely.
Okay. Any other questions for Executive Director Tony Slagle or Executive Director Chelsea Buckholz?
Thank you.
All right. Yes. Okay, we will move to agenda item number 6, report by the executive committee. This information is in the materials that were on the website. We met 3 times since the last meeting. The first meeting was on May 20th. We looked at the strat plan. We got that submitted to the governor's office. We discussed the governor's regulatory compliance division and how it affected the rules that were proposed. On the 30th, we met to go over the evaluation criteria, questions, and format for evaluating the executive director. And then on July 28th, we met and went over the results of the evaluation for the executive director, which I will give you more information on after the executive session. I'll be glad to answer any questions about that. If not, I will ask Commissioner Williams to give us a budget committee update, and that's agenda item number 7 if there's no questions.
Should I go ahead?
Yes.
Thank you. We met, seemed like several times, and things changed as we went through the budget, but we understood things would change because of COVID-19. I'm happy to say this agency is in a better position to fight through this pandemic, this slowdown in the state economy, because we've always kept a close eye on the budget. And this committee, along with the new finance director, Chelsea, I got to commend you for bringing her in because she's been a value added. We'll do the same to ensure the stability of TREC. The budget committee met on June 25th to discuss the combined budget and investment policy, as well as the second draft of the 21 budget. And Director of Finance, Renata Williams, who at that time had only been here for 5 weeks, she did a great job. She dissected the budget, revised the format so it offered a greater transparency. I think everybody on the commission was looking for that. Provided key budget highlights and did 2 analyses of the revenue trend and the FTE. She also presented a more robust budget and investment policy, which clarified the expectations and processes of the commission regarding the overall budget administration of the agency and its investments. A motion was made to accept the budget and investment policy, as well as the 21 budget as presented for consideration for the full commission. The supplemental material was sent on July 23rd, I think. Is that correct? But I think an updated one was sent today. Ms. Williams will discuss these items later when she would present the items 21 and 22. Is that correct, Chelsea and Renata?
I believe it's the same version of the budget. It was just sent a second time, so it would be at the top of your email.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So with no additions added to it, right?
Correct.
If there's any questions, I'm pretty sure me or one of the Commissioner Hargrave and Stevens did a great job being a part of this, and we just don't know. It might change at our next one, but at this point, we're real confident that we're in a really good, stable position to withstand this. Any questions? Well, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Williams, Commissioner Hargraves, and Commissioner Stevens, thank y'all for participating in that budget committee. I know during these times it's not easy to look in the future and try to figure out where we're at. So thank y'all for participating in that. I will go to agenda item number 8, report by Broker Lawyer Committee. Ron Walker will present.
Thank you, Chairman Kessner, and commissioners as well. It's good to be here. And then I was going to, Vanessa, feel free to interrupt here as well if you need to, because I think there are 2 agenda items on your agenda there that are, or 2 action items on your agenda. One is to withdraw the existing forms that are there, pull that rulemaking down, and then republish the forms again for comment as well. So, however, I'll leave that for your legal counsel to direct you in terms of taking the votes. But in terms of the presentations, the Broker Lawyer Committee met in July and reviewed many comments received from the groups that were interested, as well as individuals who had submitted a number of comments. To my knowledge, I think that just may be the record-breaking number of comments received in any one kind of rulemaking dealing with the forms. I also want to thank Vanessa and Amber for putting together, and Mark for putting together all of that information for us in a good way, and also to thank them for the new way in which they're presenting the forms to you this second round, which is a little clearer in terms of the changes that are actually being proposed. Before, there was a tracking in which you were seeing all of the various level of changes even within the committee, but I think to make it easier for people to see the final outcome of what the committee is recommending has actually a little easier to read in those presentations given to you. It became clear to us even before we proposed the forms to you last time that it was very important for two industries to really come together on the heart of the changes dealing with the option period provisions and the earnest money provisions, and that of course were the realtors as well as the Texas Land Title Association. So those two groups came together and had a meeting among themselves and invited a number of different people. I listened in and participated a little bit in that meeting, and from that meeting I think a very good consensus came through as a result of that. And even sort of what I would call, after that consensus was reached, sort of this leap to the next level. And so some creativity started flowing from there, and it ended up resulting before the committee, the proposal that you have before you, dealing primarily in paragraph 5. So with that little introduction, I'm going to walk you through the forms. I'm going to use the draft that begins on page 159 of your materials, which is the 1 to 4 family form, and then just quickly walk through those changes for you so that you can see where they came from. In paragraph 2, it's the same as the draft, or substantially the same as the draft that was sent to you at your prior meeting. I think there was a little bit of tweaking in terms of the grammar, but substantively there's no change. And you can see that the change there is primarily dealing with the definition of controls, since those controls now technologically sort of have more of a broader way of applying in different properties. Dropping down to paragraph 4, you'll see that, as I mentioned at the last meeting, there was a need for the committee to go back and look at paragraph 4 with regard to all of the forms, because the draft that you see in front of you on page 159 in paragraph 4 contains 3 subparagraphs dealing with different types of leases that may affect properties these days: residential leases, fixture leases, and then leases that we dub as natural resources that can affect different properties. Well, when you put that same paragraph in all 6 of the forms, not all 3 of those really apply. So for example, residential leases don't apply to the unimproved property form or to the new home incomplete form. So there was a need for us to remove those. But substantively, the paragraph is the same as it was proposed to you last time. There's just some corrections from form to form were made to make sure that they applied properly in each of those specific forms. And then if you drop to paragraph 5, that will be where sort of the heart of the change with this particular round has occurred, and sort of where I mentioned sort of the creativity began in this last meeting between the industries. And what you'll see in paragraph 5 and what came out of that meeting was the idea that since the earnest money and the option fee are both going to be tendered to the escrow agent, and so they're coming both from the buyer to the escrow agent at about the same time in the transaction, and in fact could be tendered in one financial transaction or one financial tendering, or in 2, depending on the choice of the buyer. It seemed that bringing those 2 paragraphs together made a lot more sense. So paragraph 5 is now a combination of paragraph 5 and 23, and so paragraph 23 simply goes away. When you go through the paragraph 5 line by line, all of those provisions look very familiar to you. There's nothing new about them. They have simply been reorganized. And so, but I did want to walk you through that, since that's the important or the most focused change, I should say, in the forms. So paragraph A, 5A, simply talks about the delivery of both the option fee and the earnest money, and says that there are two sums that are being tendered, and that can come in one financial transaction or in two. And then paragraph A1 talks about if there is any need for additional earnest money, that exists in the current paragraph 5 in the forms today. And then paragraph A2 deals with sort of the extension of the option fee or the time by which earnest money should be deposited if the last day falls on a weekend or a holiday is extended to the next business day. And then paragraph 5A3 talks about the application of the funds. And this was one of the issues that was new, and also was addressed in that industry discussion as well. And most people believe that it was important, in case there was a shortage of either the earnest money or of the option fee that was being tendered, that there was a clear indication of how that money would be applied. And so you can see paragraph 5A3 says you simply apply that to the option fee first, and then the balance to the earnest money. And then paragraph 5A4 simply talks about the authorization for the escrow agent to release the option fee to the buyer at any time. So the escrow agents can tender that money immediately over to the buyer if that's going to be their practice, or they can wait for a call from the buyer or the buyer's agent and tender at that time, or they can call them up and say, do you want us to actually send it over immediately, or do you want to come pick it up, or whatever their provisions may be. Then paragraph 5B is the termination option, which is essentially the option provision. And so we're currently have that in our current forms, where the seller is granting the buyer the unrestricted right to terminate up to a certain period of time, namely the option period. And it talks about how those notices are to be given as well. As we mentioned last time, we've removed the box in which the parties will choose whether the option fee is or is not to be applied to the sales price at closing if the deal does close. Now, because brokers had indicated that the vast majority of times the option fee is being credited to the sales price, we simply just removed that box for the purpose of making negotiations easier. And then paragraph C answers the question about what happens if the earnest money is delivered late or not delivered at all. So the same remedy that currently exists in paragraph 5 is there in 5C with regard to that question. And then paragraph 5D addresses the question is, well, what happens if the option money is not delivered timely? And so 5D is the same remedy as the current forms provide, which is there is no option if it's not delivered timely. And then paragraph 5E just simply says that time is of the essence, which is also in the current forms as well. And so that is really the core discussion in terms of all of the changes. The rest of the changes throughout the form, which I believe were also presented to you last time, I won't go through in much detail here, but you'll see those changes in paragraph 8, which are simply bringing over what was previously paragraph 4 into paragraph 8. And there's a conforming change in there as well on the last page where the broker information is there as well. And then in paragraph 10C, as we discussed at your last meeting, there's a new provision dealing with smart devices in those homes and how those passcodes and those types of things are to be tendered over to the buyer. But again, while there may have been a few grammatical changes from your last meeting, that is essentially the same as was proposed to you in your prior meeting. The same goes if you drop all the way to paragraph 18, where those provisions in paragraph 18 were also presented to you at your last meeting. Those were unchanged as well. And then you'll see in paragraph 22 just the addition of 2 additional boxes because there are some new addenda that are being proposed, the addendum regarding residential leases and the addendum for disclosures of the fixed leases. And then, as I mentioned on the last page there where the broker information is, you'll see as opposed to the reaffirmation of the agreement between the brokers. There's just simply a disclosure that there is an agreement between the brokers, so that information can pass on to the escrow agent as well. You also see the addendum for residential leases that was presented to you at the last meeting. I think the only change that has occurred between the last meeting that you had that form before you and today is the disclosure in paragraph A that advises the parties to seek the advice of counsel if there's going to be termination of leases by the time of closing. Now, that may or may not be necessary, but there was a consultation notice provided in case some action needed to be taken in that regard. And then, of course, the addendum for fixture leases essentially is unchanged. And then finally, you have the changes that were proposed to you concerning the addendum for property subject to mandatory property owners association, and essentially those are the same as were previously proposed to you as well. So that is it in a quick nutshell. Also can answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Ron Walker? If not, go ahead, Commissioner Wilkinson.
This is Jan Miller. I don't know if Delora had one too.
Commissioner Miller, I'm sorry.
Okay. I noticed in a lot of the comments that people were requesting non-realty items to be put in, I guess that's now paragraph 23, whatever paragraph it is. And it's still not. And I wondered if you can summarize why it was decided not to. And I'm sorry I didn't listen to your 7-hour meeting, and thank you for participating in that yourself.
Oh, absolutely. There was a discussion about adding it. There is still the concern that it raises questions with lenders in terms of whether or not that should or should not be attached to the contract. And so they, the committee decided to go ahead and leave that, to continue the practice of not identifying that particular addendum, as in some transactions, the lenders will ask that to simply be removed from the contract. So while from an instructional standpoint, we would recommend when the offer is made, and that is to be a particular non-realty item is to stay, that the addendum be attached and referenced. Nonetheless, if there is an amendment that needs to be done or they need to pull it off, they can simply pull that off at the time and decide how they want to address that issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bob Leonard. I do have a question.
Yes.
Actually, I have a question and two comments. One comment is, Ron, first of all, somebody obviously, this was obviously a big job, and thank you for your all that you do for us. My question is on the broker information page. What was the thought process in thinking that reconfirmation of the fee the listing broker is going to pay to the other broker was broken, and why did we change that?
I think this stems back, the history is probably more than 20 years where there has been a general idea that that should be removed entirely since the agreement between brokers, there's an argument that it shouldn't even be referenced in the contract form, and that the only thing the contract form should do is to say that agreements for the payment of brokerage fees exist outside, and that the parties will take care of it pursuant to their own agreements, which is common, obviously, in other contracts such as commercial contract forms or in the bar forms, things like that. So there's been, I think, a continuing effort to remove that, and the concern, of course, was how do we communicate to the escrow agents how to divide the compensation appropriately, and that the listing agent will advise the escrow agent the amount of compensation to deduct, and then also will advise them to what's supposed to be the payment of that amount over to the cooperating broker. And so this was just a way of confirming that this is simply a disclosure and leaving the agreement between the brokers to stand by itself, whether that's through MLS or a separate agreement that they might have between themselves.
Yeah, Ron, are not all transactions, in fact, my last transaction I had was a non-MLS transaction. So are we now going to have to, this says pursuant to a previous separate agreement, are we now going to have to promulgate yet another form or commission agreement?
Well, the Association of Realtors, of course, has an agreement between brokers when they do not have an agreement through MLS that they can enter into, as do they also have an agreement, let's say, when they come across a for sale by owner and they want to have something in writing with that owner that's not a listing agreement, but says you will agree to pay me a commission. So they are out there. Whether or not there's a bigger demand for the broker lawyer committee or for the real estate commission to undertake that responsibility, we have not addressed that question yet. But I also say that while we would want to encourage always those commission agreements between brokers to be in writing, the statute of frauds provision in the License Act doesn't require the agreement between brokers to be in writing. It does require the agreement between the parties and the broker to be in writing. So there is still a possibility that brokers could argue that they have an agreement even though it may not be in writing.
Now, not all brokers are in MLS. Not all brokers are members of the Association of Realtors. So the form you're referencing, I'm sure, is the registration agreement between brokers. Not everyone can use that. And so if not everyone can use that, we don't have a separate agreement. And I'm just going to say I disagree with trying to change. It appears like we're going, and this is more of a personal rant, but it appears like we're trying to make our residential contracts look like commercial contracts. It seems like, you know, if these people, and I spoke to a number of people about this, there was a reference to the code of ethics. Well, what if the other broker is not a member of the association, is not a realtor member, is not, and the property is not in MLS? We can't use the registration. Do we now have to come up with, seems to me like we now have to come up with another form that is promulgated by the commission as an agreement between brokers for commission. And even if we use the registration, we are now, because we've changed one very small paragraph in what is not even a part of the contract, it's on the broker information page, which really creates transparency because buyer and seller see that page. It may not be part of the contract, but they still see it. So it creates a transparency to both buyer and seller as to what commissions are being paid. Now we're being asked to fill out a 2-page form that buyer and seller may or may not see. I'm just going to go on record as saying I disagree with that. And my general comment is, and I realize the broker lawyer committee enjoys a special status within our agency, what we're trying to accomplish. But the problem I have is we are looking at some wholesale changes here. And because of the status of the broker lawyer committee, we are unable to cherry pick or line item or discuss items individually. It's almost like we're being presented a consent agenda or an omnibus motion. We have a binary choice. I have a problem with that. I agree with most of what you're saying and what you're proposing. There's one item in particular I don't agree with. So am I going to vote in favor of the entire motion when there are parts of it that I may not agree with. I don't have a solution to that unless we change the status of the broker lawyer committee. That's another whole conversation. But I have no problem sending this to the register again. And by the way, I appreciate your reworking what we were presented in May. It is much more digestible, if that's a word, easier to understand. And I have no problem presenting it to the Texas Register again. However, if all this comes back and we're asked to vote on this in November, because of the everything I just went over, I would have to vote no. This is much like this is the problem our legislature has. We have one congressman has a good idea, and by the time it goes up for a vote, there's 16 more things attached to it that you may or may not agree with, and so we end up in trouble. Rant over.
Thank you for that, and I will say that if that is the consensus of the commissioners, and again, I'm going to defer to Vanessa on this one, but if somehow or another that consensus could be communicated to us during the comment period, that might be something that the committee would want to address. And of course, Commissioner Leonard, knowing your comment there, I can definitely take that back as information to the committee for its next meeting.
Perhaps in the future, it would make me feel a lot better if things like this were presented to us as half a dozen different proposals instead of one big blanket proposal that is now a binary choice for us. It makes it difficult for us to vote yes on something that we may not be in total agreement on. Okay?
Understood.
Okay, thank you, Ron.
Okay, if there's not any more questions or comments, I'm going to ask Vanessa present items 18 and 19 and kind of go over the procedure for us doing this the way we are. We're going to move those up. General Counsel Burgess.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I always love following Mr. Walker because he gives a description that I'm not sure anyone else could. Agenda item 18 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC 537 regarding standard contract forms as highlighted in your materials. Mr. Walker covered some of this, but I'll provide a brief summary of action taken on these rules since publication in the Register. The Broker Lawyer Committee met on July 17th. They reviewed extensive public comments. It was over 200 pages. Often those pages had multiple comments on it, and they went through every single one and addressed them in what you've heard referenced as the 7-hour meeting. I think it was 7 hours and 45 minutes. In response to those comments, including comments from various industry associations, and after evaluating and drafting new language, the committee voted to withdraw the rules contract forms as currently proposed and re-propose these items with revisions at this meeting for possible adoption in November of 2020. It's important to note here the value of moving forward with that proposal in May, as the public comments received in response helped shape that discussion at the July 17th Broker Lawyer meeting and propelled the committee forward in its decision to republish the rules as currently drafted. The staff recommendation on agenda item 19 is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to withdraw the amendments to chapter 537 posted in the July 12th issue of the Texas Register and the forms adopted by reference.
Okay, we have a motion.
I will make.
Jan Miller, and I so moved.
Commissioner Miller moved.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Stevens. Was that Commissioner Stevens?
Wilkinson.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor and a second. I'm going to ask if there's anybody opposed to this motion. Hearing none, seeing none. Anybody abstaining from this motion? Motion carries. If you would, agenda item 19, please.
Sure. Agenda item 19 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 537 regarding standard contract forms, as highlighted in your materials. I'll give a brief summary. Mr. Walker actually walked you guys through the bulk of the changes. The Broker Lawyer Committee recommended revisions to contract forms adopted by reference under the proposed amendments, and new rules to Chapter 537 to address issues that have arisen in response to public comment received from the previously posted version of these rules in the June 12th issue of the Texas Register. Of particular note are the following changes, which is language that was added to paragraph 4 to address leases to which seller is a party and require seller to acknowledge that buyer has received a copy of all leases or will receive a copy within 3 days after the effective date. And also the change to paragraph 4 that was amended to include language regarding disclosure of existing leases, including residential, fixture, or natural resources leases as applicable within 3 days after the effective date. The other change of note would be the change to paragraph 5, which was amended to authorize payment of option fee to escrow agents separately or combined with earnest money in a single payment, clarifies the order of the application of funds to be credited first to the option fee and then to earnest money, and now incorporates language previously found in paragraph 23 relating to remedy for failure to timely deliver. Staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 537 and the forms adopted by reference as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Mr. Chairman, move
Yes.
that the commission approve our staff's recommendation.
Commissioner Leonard has moved the motion.
I second. Commissioner Williams?
Commissioner Williams says second. Any further discussion? Any discussion? I'll ask any of those voting against the motion. Anybody abstaining from the motion? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Thank you, General Counsel Burgess. We will now move to agenda item number 9, Education Standards Advisory Committee. Chair Youngblood will present.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Good morning.
Morning. All right, let me just pull up my notes here. Thank you for having me on this morning. I'm just going to give a quick report with regards to our meeting. As you know, I'm Kalea Youngblood, the chair of the Education Standards Advisory Committee, also known as ESAC. The committee met on July 13th and discussed several items. As you may know, the commission may award continuing education for obtaining certain professional designations from outside groups. The committee received a report from the professional designations work group and decided to table that until Rule 535.92 goes final in February 2021. The committee formed a working group to discuss continuing education topics, and the committee also received an update from staff on licensing exam availability and the reopening of exam sites, which you received again today. The committee discussed a timed outline template for courses and received an update from staff on that as well. That concludes my report, and I will certainly entertain any questions if you have any.
Yes, Chairman Youngblood, I've got one question or a comment. I understand that there's a 3-hour contract course that's going to be required when you start renewing in February, and y'all have worked with staff to provide a form that if someone currently has a contracts class, they can submit it for approval of this 3 hours without resubmitting the entire course for approval. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I believe that's correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Education Standards Advisory Committee? Okay. Thank you for your time and your service. We will now move to report by the Broker Responsibility Working Group, Chair Leslie Lerner.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning, Leslie.
Good morning. We have really taken upon ourselves to discuss the education and experience requirements necessary to become a broker. Our first conversation was very broad and everybody had many good ideas. And so right now we're trying to narrow it down and discuss each one individually and come up with a good balance between the two. We're definitely getting many ideas from everyone and meeting again at the end of this month to discuss proposals from everyone that went out there and put everything together. We are going to start crafting possible recommendations for all of you to consider in your November meeting. And we are discussing the possibility of a broker apprenticeship program and other items that were discussed in the previous group's mission that were never finished. We're also discussing the comment that was made by a broker about continuing education requirements and the broker responsibility course. A member stated that he didn't feel it was necessary for some people that were not licensed or did not have other licensees under them to have to take that class. So we are discussing people's comments as well. We have set more meeting dates for August, September, and October, and hopefully we'll get something to you by November.
Okay, any questions for the broker responsibility working group? Okay, thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 11, Real Estate Inspector Committee. Chair Lee Warren will present.
Good morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The Inspector Advisory Committee met via teleconference on July 20th. The education rules, which changed the pre-licensure process, were proposed at the previous commission meeting to you all, and they have gone through the public comment period. After considering the comments that we had received on that, the Inspector Committee voted to forward those rules as proposed, along with some non-substantive changes made as a result of questions raised by the Governor's Office to the Commissioners for approval at your meeting today. Prior to the rules coming to you guys, the rules as amended were sent to the Governor's Office for final review to ensure they were in line with the directives. There were a few minor non-substantive changes made to the language, which are included in your materials for today as supplemental materials. Our Standards of Practice Subcommittee has been working diligently in their current review of the Standards of Practice. The committee's goal is to get all of the changes put together in one, submit them to the full Inspector Committee for public comment and approval, or for proposal. The SOP subcommittee should have the review of standards completed by the end of the year, but as with any review of the standards, it takes quite a bit of time and effort to go through them all. Once we go through them all and make recommended changes, they will go through public comment period first before we will submit them to the commissioners for final approval. I would anticipate those would actually come to you by around this time next year, by the time that entire process is done. Amendments to the Consumer Protection Notice were also discussed at our meeting. Some additional verbiage was added to the notice to ensure that the public was aware that inspectors may limit their liability within their own inspection agreements. There was also discussion about whether there should be a separate notice for inspectors and/or one for brokers and agents. We, as the committee, decided to simply amend the existing notice, as that was the best way to ensure that the consumers are provided the most relevant and consistent information, regardless of whether they saw the notice at a broker's office or an inspector's office. We want to thank Commissioner Turner for his input in creating this, help in creating this new CPN, which we feel gives the consumer the most accurate and relevant information all in one place. Excuse me. The Plumbing Board has recommended amending the rule that prohibits anyone other than licensed plumbers to perform sewer scope tests. The opinion from the Attorney General's office indicated the Plumbing Board's restriction on that ability to test could be challenged, but did not outright invalidate the rule. While the Plumbing Board goes through their process to amend the rule to remove the prohibition is still in effect. Any amendment to the rule to allow other persons to scope sewer lines will likely not be finalized until September 1st at the earliest, and we look forward to that clarification, which should be coming from the Plumbing Board. On TREC's website, when a license holder's business address is listed for most brokerages, that isn't much of a concern. However, that may not be the case for inspectors. Since most inspectors are sole proprietors, the address that is listed as their business address is often their home address. This could pose a potential safety risk having their home address listed for the public to see. TREC staff recognizes the potential concern here, and they are working on possibly a policy change to address that concern in the near future, to either remove the address or to possibly allow for a PO box or a mailing address or something of that sort. But we are looking into that. That is my report, and I'd be willing to take any questions.
Any questions for the Inspector Committee Chair? Chair Warren, thank you for your service and your heavy lifting. Barbara, did you have a question?
No, thank you.
Okay.
This is Jan Miller, and I do have a question. How soon do you think the consumer report will be changed, because it affects the websites of 197,000 licensees?
I completely understand. That was actually one of the specific things that we brought up. The proposal for the new consumer protection notice is in today's materials for proposal. But after talking with Tony, the thought process is the link will not change. So everybody will not have to change their website links at all. The form itself will just be updated. So it shouldn't be a broken link. There should be no change needed by any license holders and their website addresses.
That'll be fortunate if it works. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, any other questions for Chairman Warren? Okay, hearing none, I am going to take up agenda item 24. Currently, I'm going to move 24 up. So Darlene Brown, Director of McConnell & Jones LLP, will present.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Darlene Brown, and I serve as your internal auditor. In your materials is the proposed fiscal year 2021 annual internal audit plan for your consideration. We developed this plan based upon our risk assessment and consultation with your leadership team. What we propose this year is 3 audits. The first one is the Public Funds Investment Act compliance audit. This is required by statute to be completed every 2 years. The second audit is the asset management, where we'll assess the agency's processes for identifying, recording, and tracking the assets. And then the third audit is where we believe really important, given the times that we're in, is the human resources, where we'll focus on the impact in keeping employees engaged during the telework environment and the agency's success. So we'll be looking at the hiring, the merit increases, the salaries, those kinds of issues. So I'm asking for your approval on the fiscal year 21 annual internal audit plan, and we will be happy to answer any questions you might have now or in the future.
Okay, I will seek a motion to approve the audit plan for fiscal year 2021.
I will move that we approve the audit plan for the upcoming years of 2021.
Okay, a motion made by Commissioner Leonard.
Rayto Stevens seconds.
Commissioner Rayto Stevens second the motion. Any discussion on this? Hearing none. Anybody opposed to this motion? Any commissioners abstaining from this motion? Motion carries. We will now go to agenda item number 12, just real briefly, public comments. We had 1 member sign up for public comments. It will be coming in later on the agenda, I believe agenda item number 15. I will tell you, the material is posted on TREC's website as early as possible. I know we get supplements in, those are also posted. We welcome public comment. I know it's a little bit different now with everything being virtual, but once all the material is posted, please keep an eye on it. As supplements are submitted, they are posted. Of course, we do get some supplements at the last moment, like we did this time. But the one public comment we will tend when we get to that agenda item. It is now 11:21. We're going to go into executive session. I am scheduling 1 hour for executive session. So we will be back around 12:21 Central Standard Time. Okay. We're now going into executive session. I believe all the commissioners just got another link to join executive.
Can we take like a 3-minute break?
Okay, it is 11:24 p.m. Central Time. I will call this meeting back in order. We will start with agenda item number 14, the recovery fund. Deputy General Counsel Moore will present.
Agenda item 14 is discussion and possible action to authorize settlement of recovery fund claims. We have 4 cases that are eligible for discussion and action. These are listed on page 49 of your materials, and I am available to answer any questions you may have.
Hearing no questions, can I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Bob Leonard. Moved that on agenda item 14A, move to authorize a settlement payment of $2,391.90 in actual damages plus court costs and reasonable attorney's fees of $2,000. On agenda item 14B, move to authorize a settlement payment of $3,800 in actual damages plus interest and court costs. On agenda item 14C, move to authorize a settlement payment of $50,000, the maximum amount allowed by law. On agenda item 14D, move to authorize a settlement payment of $21,784.32 in actual damages, plus interest, court costs, and reasonable attorney's fees.
We have a motion by Commissioner Leonard.
Second, Barbara Russell.
I have a second by Commissioner Russell. Any discussion? Any commissioners against the motion? Any commissioners abstaining from the motion? Motion carries. We will go to agenda item number 15. We do have public comment on this. I will have Director of Education Jennifer Wheeler will present the motion, and then we will have a comment from Stan Harbuck as a member of the public.
Hi. Good afternoon, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams. Agenda item 15 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC, Chapter 535, Subchapter R as follows. 535-208 is application for a license. 535-209 is examinations. 535-212, education and experience required for a license. 535-213, qualifying inspector courses. And 535-214, education and experience required for a license. These rules have been before you on multiple occasions. I'm happy to provide you with a summary of each rule action. However, if there are no objections, I'll assume you might just prefer the highlights.
Highlights, please.
Okay, thank you. These rules encompass changes to the inspector education requirements. They provide for a transition period for students enrolled in the current education path and provide an effective date for new coursework to come into place on March 1st, 2021. The new course modules more closely align with the national exam content outline and provide for more relevant Texas components. These rules have been submitted to the Governor's Office of Regulatory Compliance and have been revised based on their recommendations. On Thursday, August 6th, we received a determination from the Governor's Office indicating that the changes to these rules are consistent with state policy and the Commission may move forward with adoption. So I'll go on to comments and then Chair Kestner, do you move to the public comment?
Yes, we'll move to the public comment.
Okay, thank you. There were 2 comments received. One commenter requested formatting changes to 535-208 and 209, which were incorporated by the Inspector Committee. Another commenter requested amendments to 535-212 through 214 because he believes the inspector's ability to complete coursework would be limited. Inspectors would be penalized by being required to take double the coursework, and that there was unnecessary duplication in hours required, which he believes contradicts the agency's sunset directive. After reviewing the comments, the Inspector Committee declined to make any additional changes, believing that the new course modules and overall reduction in education hours will benefit both the inspector industry and the consumers of Texas. Further, the committee believes the proposed language is in compliance with the directives provided by the agency's sunset review.
Okay, thank you. We do have public comment, and unless something is wrong with this, I would like a motion in a second and have public comment since he's there in person or virtually during the discussion.
So moved.
I had a motion by Commissioner
Wilkinson.
Second.
A second by Commissioner Leonard. Now discussion. We do have a public member that would like to discuss Dan Harbuck. Are you here, Mr. Harbuck?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt real quick?
Yes, Vanessa.
Chair Kestner. I don't think that Director Wheeler was able to give her staff recommendation, so she can give the staff recommendation and then you have the motion. No, it's okay. Let's do that. Let's have the correct motion on the floor and then we can have the public comment.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Ms. Wheeler, can you go back to your staff recommendation?
Not a problem. Thank you both. Staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit for adoption amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 535, Subchapter R, as presented to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes.
So moved.
Okay, Commissioner Wilkinson made the motion.
Second.
Commissioner Leonard seconded the motion. I'll apologize for that. Now discussion. Now, Mr. Harbuck, are you still there?
Yes, can you hear me again?
Yes, I can hear you, and feel free. We are going to limit to 3 minutes as usual, but the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Kestner and commissioners of the Texas Real Estate Commission. I just wanted to, I think some written notes have been provided as a result of this recent decision by the RCD. Our concerns are that some of the issues that are required to be addressed under Senate Bill 1995, as well as under North Carolina Dental, were not addressed by the RCD decision, in particular the question of whether or not these rules complied with a clearly articulated and affirmatively expressed statute from the legislature directing TREC to be able to avoid market competition issues by a directive from the state legislature. I won't go into a lot of detail here. Those notes provide more detail, I think, both in the more recent comments as well as the comments that were included in prior meetings on these rules. But essentially what that means is that if the review is only a cursory review, it does not satisfy the conditions required under SB 1995 or under North Carolina Dental, and so it does not resolve the antitrust issues that may be involved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Turn that stopwatch off before it starts beeping. Okay, any further discussion on this agenda item? Hearing none, I will tell you this has been vetted for the last year and a half, and I know everybody who has had a part of this has certainly done everything they could to make this, comply with the regulatory compliance division established by the governor. And like Director Wheeler said, we did get that letter Thursday night. If there is no discussion, we have a motion. I will ask all those against the motion to please speak. Anybody abstaining from the motion? Hearing none against, none abstaining, motion carries. Thank you for your hard work on this, Education Director Wheeler and also the Inspector Committee. We will now move to agenda item 16. Director of Licensing, Denise Sample, will present.
Good afternoon, Commission. This is Denise Sample, Director of Licensing. And agenda item 16 is the discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC 535.400, registration of easement and right-of-way agents. The proposed amendments to 535.400 were published in the June 12, 2020 issue of the Texas Register. The amendments eliminate the requirement for an applicant for an easement or right-of-way agent to provide a photograph to the Commission. No comments were received. Staff recommends that you authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit for adoption amendments to this rule as published to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
Mr. Chairman, move that the Commission approve our staff's recommendation.
Moved by Commissioner Leonard.
Yeah.
Second by Commissioner Stevens. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those against the motion? Any commissioners abstaining from the motion? Hearing none against nor abstaining, motion carries. We will go to agenda item number 17. Presented by General Counsel Vanessa Burgess.
Unmute. Okay, agenda item 17, discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC 535.65, responsibilities and operations of providers of qualifying courses. The proposed amendments to 535.65 were published in the June 12th issue of the Texas Register. The amendments correct a reference within the rule to include the appropriate subsection and were recommended by the Education Standards Advisory Committee. No comments were received. Staff's recommendation is that you authorize the staff on behalf of the Commission to submit for adoption amendments to this rule as published to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Wilkinson had the motion. Commissioner Leonard had the second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any commissioners against the motion? Any commissioners abstaining from the motion? Hearing no against nor abstaining, motion carries. We will go to agenda item number 20. Will be presented by Deputy Executive Director Tony Slagle.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. Deputy Executive Director Tony Slagle. Before you is an item that was brought to you previously in November. It's a rule amending, the amended rule brings forward a new consumer protection notice. This was discussed earlier by the chair of the Inspector Committee, Lee Warren. And there is a form also referenced and adopted by reference based in this rule, which is also attached to your materials. Essentially, what the form does is it provides notice to consumers about the obligation of an inspector to carry liability insurance, but also informs them of their ability to limit their liability. And informs the consumer that if they have any questions about this, to speak to an attorney to get further clarification. Staff recommends that you authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendment to 22 TAC 531.18 consumer information in the form adopted by reference as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and comment. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Deputy Slagle?
I just before we continue, I did want to say that as the chair of the inspection committee referenced earlier, Commissioner Turner did work with them on this language, and staff as well, to come up with something. He had an objection to how it was originally proposed, and this was language that was a compromise based on those discussions.
I would entertain a motion.
I so move. This is Jan Miller.
Commissioner Miller has made the motion.
Second.
Commissioner Leonard has seconded the motion. Any discussion?
This is Jan Miller. I would like to make sure, as Lee indicated earlier today, that everything will be in a link. So as long as the agent has a licensed agent has already properly linked it on his website, it will go and it will be a corrected form, and we don't have to have them redo everything this time around.
Commissioner Miller, that is the hope, and that's what we're going to be working towards, because we definitely don't want this to be any sort of burden to anybody who's already linked to it. There's a process by which we have forms linked on the website, but we'll make sure we look at it to try to guarantee that that doesn't happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? Any commissioners against this motion? Any commissioners abstaining from this motion? Hearing no commissioners against nor abstaining, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will go to agenda item 21, discussion the budget investment policy. Director of Finance, Renata Williams, will present.
Good afternoon, Chair Kastner and Commissioners. I'm Renata Williams, Director of Finance, and I would first like to thank my staff who have worked tirelessly, as well as the Budget Committee, for their leadership and guidance. I will begin by addressing agenda item 21, which is discussion and possible action regarding the budget and investment policy. These materials were provided to you in a separate email earlier this morning, and I will begin on page 8 of your supplemental materials. The cover on those documents looks like this, and I'm going to just share my screen if you don't mind. Okay. Is everyone able to see that?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So as Commissioner Williams mentioned during his report, the Budget Committee did meet on June 25th and were presented a revised version of the budget and investment policy, which seeks to clarify the expectations and processes of the Commission in regards to how we administer the budget and investments of this agency. There was not entirely a lot that was changed since the introduced version of the policy that was presented at the May 4th Commission meeting. Key highlights of the budget are a timeline of events, and let me just scroll to page 8. So again, key highlights of the budget policy are a timeline of events with specific dates removed, but rather key milestones and targets are in place as it retains the same cadence of providing 2 draft budgets. Staff will report expenses which exceed a 10% variance of $20,000 for Budget Committee approval. This policy authorizes a single reserve fund for operations and contingencies, and it shall carry a balance that can accommodate 6 months of projected operational expenses. The investment policy was also revised to ensure that key components that are required by the Texas Public Funds Investment Act are included in our local investment policy. Those components include items such as having the scope, which identifies the assets of the agency and our primary goals of preservation of principal and liquidity of funds invested. Prudence, our objectives, delegation of authority, clearly identifying who the investment officers are for the agencies, and these individuals are responsible for all transactions undertaken under this policy. The Public Funds Investment Act training, reporting requirements. It identifies the frequency of the reporting, as well as the compliance audits that are required. Safekeeping, the investment strategy, authorized investments, and the account balances. This concludes my presentation regarding agenda item 21. Staff recommends that the budget and investment policy be adopted as presented, and I am happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move that the commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Leonard.
I second. Commissioner Williams.
Second by Commissioner Williams. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none. Any commissioners against this motion? Any commissioners abstaining from the motion? Hearing none, against nor abstaining, motion carries. Agenda item 22, again, Director of Finance, Renata Williams will present the 2021 budget.
Yes, sir. Agenda item 22 is discussion and possible action regarding the FY 2021 budget. And as discussed previously, the Budget Committee did meet on June 25th and was presented a revised budget. And I'm going to share my screen again. So let me see that. Okay. So key highlights that were presented to the Budget Committee included a change in the format to include an executive summary. We presented them with budget highlights, revenue and expenditure overview, and then the second draft line item budget detail. In here, let me see if I can make that a little larger for you guys. Here you can see we've made some changes to the actual format of this as well, where we have the projected beginning balance, which is our total beginning balance. You see how much we have set aside clearly for our operating reserves and our available balance within the Texas Treasury Safekeeping Trust account or our working capital. So we've identified all sources of funding, what we have set aside. We've presented a 5-year budget. So we have actual costs for 18, 19, projected costs for 20, proposed costs for 21, proposed 22 and 23. Okay. In addition to this, we're also including information regarding staffing and a 5-year revenue trend analysis. This concludes my presentation regarding agenda item 22. Staff recommends that the FY 2021 budget be adopted as presented, and I am happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the budget.
I would entertain a motion.
Dan Miller.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Miller made the motion.
Second.
Commissioner Leonard, second. Now let's have discussion and any questions for Director of Finance. All right, I just want to say thank you, not only Director of Finance Renata Williams, but also the Budget Committee for putting this together and putting it into a format that is easy to read and easy to follow. I want to thank you for that. It makes looking at this much easier than in the past. All right, any other discussion?
I will second Chairman Kestner's comment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any commissioners against the motion? Any commissioners abstaining from the motion? Hearing none against nor abstaining, motion carries. Thank you, Director of Finance Renata Williams. Okay, that moves us to agenda item number 23. And this is the review of the TREC Executive Director. As mentioned earlier, we had 2 executive meetings in July, one establishing the criteria for the evaluation and one evaluating and going over the results of the evaluation. I will tell you, we not only had commissioners respond, we also had board members respond. We also had a number of, I don't know, I want to say 20, I could be wrong, staff people also turn in an evaluation, scoring and comments. I will tell you, in these unprecedented times, the executive director has done an incredible job moving the agency forward, not only maintaining what we needed to maintain, but also making strides, to get the agency where it needed to be during these times. This included the majority of staff working from home. This included taking care of over $250,000 worth of checks that are mailed in every month. Also includes having 11,000 people due to renew after the extensions in March, April, May, and June were extended to July 31st. The overall evaluation was very positive. It was very consistent. Some evaluations you will have high and lows. This was consistent across the table, and everybody is extremely happy with the job Executive Director Buckholz has done. We will evaluate Executive Director Buckholz again in February at the normal cycle to get all the evaluations done on the 1-year cycle that's been in the past. But overall, extremely positive. And I want to thank the staff that also did the evaluation for taking the time to let us know. We have been in contact with staff and the executive director since March, but it's been virtually or on the phone, not in the office. So we really appreciate the feedback from the staff. I just want to say, an open meeting, Executive Director Buckholz, thank you for a job well done. We heard comments, a breath of fresh air, moving the agency forward. We just really appreciate all you've done to make our agency the agency it should be. I'll be glad to open up for any comments from any commissioners and our directors.
This is Bob Leonard. Again, I will second your comments, Scott. I'd like to add to that. I believe it was Vanessa added the staff polling that she did. That was especially helpful, and I hope we continue with that. It was a great insight. Often we show up once a quarter and we really have no idea what the day-to-day operations are of the agency, what the morale is in the building and so on. This is a great insight into that. And I think it's very important for us to know how the rest of the staff is feeling. So I hope that continues.
All right. Thank you. There is no motion here, so we will move to agenda item. We've already covered 24. We will move to agenda item 25. Director of Education Jennifer Wheeler will present.
Thank you, Chair Kestner. I'll be presenting both agenda items 25 and 26 for you today. Agenda item 25 is discussion and possible action to approve the 2021-2022 broker responsibility course materials, which were sent to you by email under separate cover. Before I make my recommendation, I'd like to acknowledge the writing group who worked diligently to make these text materials available. And other than TREC staff, the subject matter experts who contributed to this effort include Carrie Lewis, Avis Wukash, Rick Albers, Lori Levy, Lisa Harper Rizzoli, and Cheryl Pruitt. And we appreciate each of you for your valuable contributions to this project. And with that said, staff recommends approval of the course materials as presented with any technical or non-substantive changes. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I would entertain a motion.
I so move, Barbara.
Commissioner Russell made the motion.
Second.
Commissioner Leonard has seconded the motion. Any discussion?
I have a
question, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sure that with the changes under page 9 of the, it says, should the option fee be handled by the title company? Since that, will that be, whatever comes, will that be changed, or how will that be handled?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That will be adjusted depending on, you know, the adoptions today or the proposals that are out. And typically what we do is send out an addenda to the education providers who have been approved to offer the course so that they can update the materials.
Thought so. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did I also hear another commissioner with a comment?
Yes, I have another question. Has anybody timed teaching this yet? It looks very complex compared to previous years.
So we did are you speaking, Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yes, this is Jan Miller. Can you hear? Did you hear my question?
Was your question, has anybody timed a presentation of the course based on these new materials?
Yes.
So the subject matter experts, along with our curriculum developer, Jennifer Gruby, have worked on how long each segment should take. And both of those, in particular, Carrie Lewis and Avis Wukash, are experienced in providing the instructor trainings and the courses to our license holders. So I think they have a pretty good hold on how much time it's going to take to speak to each topic.
That'll be appreciated.
And as a reminder, we'll also supplement this with a PowerPoint that will help offer the instructors guidance on how to move through the course.
Wow. Okay. I urge you to recheck for little details. I just happened to see one and I just barely perused it.
Okay. You're welcome to send that directly to me.
Okay, any other comments on the working group's presentation? I would just like to thank you for putting the broker succession planning in it. Easy for me to say. I think it's something that never pops up until it pops up. So thank y'all for addressing that. Okay, the chair would certainly entertain a motion. We already have a motion. I'm sorry, we're in discussion. I'm sorry. Any commissioners against the motion? Any commissioners abstaining from the motion? Hearing none against, none abstaining, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, so agenda item number 26 is discussion and possible action to approve new or changes to TREC forms listed in your materials. These two forms are Form CECA-4 is the Real Estate Continuing Education Course Application Form, and Form CC-1-0 is the new Continuing Education Contract Course Identification Form. Both forms correspond to the requirement for real estate license holders to complete at least 3 hours of CE coursework on the topic of contracts effective February 1, 2021. The only change to the CE course application form is the addition of an item allowing providers to indicate that the course is contract related. The new form allows providers to request staff to review their currently approved courses to determine if they satisfy the contract course requirement. And if there are no questions, staff recommends Commission approve these forms as presented with any technical or non-substantive changes, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Chair would entertain a motion.
I so move, Barbara.
Commissioner Russell has made the motion.
Second.
Commissioner Leonard is second. Any discussion or questions for Director of Education Wheeler?
Yes, I would have a question.
Commissioner Russell.
Would you think that the leases and addendums for leases, residential and commercial, would qualify?
Yes, ma'am. Any contract related form will qualify for this requirement.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none. Any commissioners against the motion? Any commissioners abstaining from the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving to agenda item 27, discussion and possible action regarding possible topics for November workshop. We've talked about discussing an online comment sheet for comments for contracts or any proposed rules. We've talked about some training documents, meeting dates, and then we talked about maybe getting some fine tuning in how information is delivered to the commission prior to the meeting on certain topics. How much information we need, how much information is too much. Other ideas that y'all would like to look at possibly for the November workshop?
The recovery fund, that's in that general comment you made, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Information that we get on the recovery fund. And again, this is, not set in stone. Just think of anything you think we need to go over that would help move the agency forward. We will certainly look at it. Future meetings. I think the next time we are scheduled, the workshop is November 9th. Is that correct? And the commission meeting is November 10th at 10 a.m. I certainly hope those are in person. So let's hope.
Yes.
Anything else to be brought before the commission? Future agenda items or anything? Hearing none, I need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
A second, Stevens.
I had a motion by Commissioner Leonard, a second by Commissioner Russell, I believe. Any discussion? Hearing none. All against? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned at 12:02 p.m. Mountain Time, 1:02 p.m. Central Time. Thank y'all for serving as commissioners, and thank all the staff members and all the public members that logged in and sat through this meeting. We appreciate your efforts, and we certainly want your input. Thank y'all.
Thank you.